Fala pessoal, beleza? Que bom que vocês estão aqui para mais um vídeo e um testemunho mais do que especial, um episódio muito especial com um amigo que nós temos conversado já há algum tempo, provavelmente há uns 2 anos, se eu não me engano, e graças a Deus nós temos essa oportunidade agora de apresentá-lo para vocês. Então hoje vai ser uma conversa muito legal, eu espero que você goste e também participe e compartilhe com os seus amigos. Então eu vou chamar aqui o meu amigo Peter Dixon. Hey, Peter, how's everything? Hope you're doing well. Thank you for coming in and participating here in the show.
Hey, it is fantastic to be here. I really appreciate it. You've been on my show a few times, and you've always done a great job. So it's great to reciprocate and be on your show.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. It's a great opportunity. I always say to our YouTube channels, YouTube subscribers here, that your channel made a lot of difference in my life during the process of, you know, waking up, discovering about 7 Day Adventism after 40 years. And not only your channel, proclamation and former Adventist fellowship as well, but listening your channel, listening to the conversation and how open you are receiving people, that really makes a difference. Thanks so much for what you're doing.
Oh, thank you. Coming from you, that means a lot. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Guys, we're going to talk here about Peter and his experience being in 7 Day Adventist for a long time, and also his process of, coming out of 7 Day Adventist, how everything works, how everything happened to him, and learning about his life and his testimony. So, Peter, talk about a little bit more about you, about your location, about where you're talking from, and your family and your name.
Well, I'm from Australia, the great land down under, from down under. And so my accent might be a bit hard to understand, but I think you're going to put some captions on or voiceover or something. So, yeah, I'm in Australia and I've lived in and around the Currumbong area, which is where Avondale College is. It's now Avondale University, and that is the institution that Ellen White founded. I think, well, I won't say the dates, but when she was here in Australia between 1890 and 1900 or 1901, she was here for 10 years. She lived just down the road from where I live. Literally a 2-minute walk away is her house here in Currumbong. It's still very well looked after, and a lot of Adventists live in this town and go and visit her home and have a look at it. And there's tours that people take them through. My parents were Seventh-day Adventist missionaries. I was born in Papua New Guinea, and we traveled around New Zealand, Fiji, always back and forth to here at Avondale in Currumbong here in Australia. So I call this place home. And it's funny, when people talk about how many generation Adventists they've been, some use it to show off, and some use it to say, "Wow, I'm that marinated in Adventism, but I still managed to escape to leave it." And so I was fifth generation Seventh Day Adventist,
Wow.
and my great great grandfather apparently met Ellen G. White when she was doing a camp meeting or speaking at a camp meeting north of here, about 10 hours north in Queensland, in just south of Brisbane, big city there in Queensland. And allegedly he met her. And so that side of the family, still Adventist, still very much Adventist believers. I would say that when I was younger, even at the age of 7 or 8, I began asking my Sabbath school teachers some questions about the close of probation and the time of trouble and
Mhm.
what's this about the investigative judgment and these big words that I'd heard talk. Because keep in mind, I lived on the campus of Avondale as a young boy. My father was a lecturer there at Avondale College. Des Ford was there at this time. Norm Young, Lyndon Rogers, Dr. Lindsay, all of these guys were there, and I grew up with their kids.
Wow.
And so I was surrounded constantly by that community who were very much interested in what I call the new theology, that kind of Des Ford inspired gospel
Mhm.
Adventism, progressive Adventism, whatever you want to call it. And so I was privy to some pretty interesting conversations. I didn't pay too much attention, but I do remember asking questions at a young age and feeling like it just didn't add up for me. But
Mhm.
I loved Sabbath lunch. I loved my relatives. I loved my friends. I loved Sabbath school. I loved Pathfinders. And honestly, I had a pretty joyous upbringing. On the campus of Avondale, there are two churches. So there's the college, now university, and there's the college church, and then up the road near the entrance to the campus is the Memorial Church, and the Memorial Church is very conservative, traditional Adventist, fully Ellen White prophet. Whereas, right down the bottom of the hill is the college church where all the Des Ford theology was being discussed, and
Wow.
that he was lecturing to all the students. So I was there in the middle of this, and in many ways, I believe that Glacier View, many of your listeners will know about that, where Des Ford was asked to present his beliefs and to find out how different they were to the Adventist Church. And that was in 1980. And I know that leading up to that, many of the members at the Memorial Church I just mentioned were very opposed to Des Ford. And in
Mm.
fact, they started a group of people called the Concerned Brethren. We nicknamed them the CBs. And back then, you were either a CB or a Fordite.
Wow.
And so the CBs really put pressure on our division and union to get rid of Des Ford. They really believed his theology was dangerous. And the reality is, his theology, which often is called the new theology, is very different to traditional Adventism.
Yes.
I believe it was and is a threat to the traditional Adventist church. And I believe the traditional Adventists that you see and hear all over the internet are actually fairly representing Adventism. I believe it's the new theology that we speak of that perhaps you and I gravitated to more when we were Adventists is a better version of Adventism. But I think it's a whole new thing. It's a hybrid. It's not even a progression from traditional Adventism. It's like this new thing sprung up. And
Yeah.
I was here at ground zero when it sprang into life. I was here at ground zero when the conflict happened. I was a young
Mm.
person. And that conflict spread all through the states. The Standish brothers started Heartland, which is, I think, a Adventist college in the States. And from there, you can have a direct line to Doug Batchelor, David Asherick, Ty Gibson, um, all the current more conservative, traditional fundamentalist Adventists link back to Heartland, link to the Standish brothers, who were right here in my town with the Concerned Brethren fighting Des Ford. And so
Wow.
the leadership that had a lot of pressure to get rid of Des, they pulled together Glacier View, and Des Ford presented his case, and
Mhm.
and I believe it's where the church truly split in two, and they don't even realize it yet. And at that time, one of the things I've discovered on my show in interviewing people, particularly in season 2, I did 86 interviews with a bunch of people who were at Glacier View. I've interviewed Des Ford himself, and the interesting thing is the church promoted a lie. They said that at Glacier View, the majority of delegates, and there was over 120, couldn't find light in Des's teachings, and the irony is that Bill Johnson was one of the ones who promoted that. And there's a TV show, John Ankerberg. I'd encourage everyone to go and watch it. I don't know if you've translated that or not, but it's
Yeah. I published the 5 parts with actually the 2 parts with Walter Ray and Desmond Ford,
yeah,
and the other one with
Walter Martin.
Walter Martin. All the 5 parts dubbed in Portuguese.
Oh, that is so good. And that's with Bill Johnson, or Dr. William G. Johnson.
That's
And
amazing. That's
in that
amazing.
1984 one, I encourage your viewers, go and watch what Rodrigo has done there. I've watched that so many times, and that's the video that he says the majority of delegates couldn't find light in Des's teachings. And then the irony, I interviewed Bill Johnson on my show 4 years ago before he passed away, and in it he says the majority at Glacier View did agree with Des, so much so that we had, and he was involved with making the consensus document that they voted on, and the
Hmm.
majority agreed. And that's the lie at
Exactly.
the center of Glacier View. So anyway, the long story short is that I had lots of questions growing up, but I kind of enjoyed Adventism culturally. I had my music ministry, and it wasn't until becoming an older dad, I'm so slow, Rodrigo. I got married when I was 48. I had my first baby when I was 50, and she just turned 12 just before Christmas, and my other daughter just turned 11 last weekend. And so anyway, when my first daughter was born, here I am at 50. The church, Ted Wilson was now leader. Again, irony maybe, or
Hmm.
paradoxically, his father, Ted Wilson, oversaw the whole defrocking of Desmond Ford. Here's Ted Wilson coming in with an iron fist, uh, and bringing in the compliance document, and trying to bring the church back to its traditional roots. And he's successfully doing that, as you know.
Yep.
Um, and so then, then they had the women's ordination no vote, and I'm sitting there with my daughter. By now, she's about 2, watching this on YouTube, and I literally had a light go off in my head. Here, age 52, I can't put my name to this anymore. I was able to
Wow.
be a cultural Adventist. I was able to go, oh, well, I don't really believe in 1844, and I can question things, but I'll bring about a change from the inside. Classic
Mm.
gospel Adventist, we'll stay and we'll bring about a change, which is absolutely deluded. You cannot change it. Adventism at its core is not going to change because of its Ellen White confirmed beliefs. So
Yeah.
anyway, I sat there and I thought, yeah, that's it. I can't put my name to it anymore. She was literally on my knee, and so anyway, a little bit of time goes by. I didn't think too much more about it, but about a year later, I said to a friend of mine, look, by the time it's my next birthday, I'm going to leave. I won't be an Adventist. And so then I think I was about 54 by then, and I'm just sitting there going, a week before my birthday. Whoa, Friday. It was Friday night before my birthday, which was on the
Wow.
following Monday, and I thought to myself, oh, my brain was going, "Are you going to honor that pact you made with yourself?" And I found myself, getting my phone and typing on Facebook, "This is my last Sabbath as a Seventh Day Adventist," and I sat
On
there
Facebook.
on
On
Facebook.
Facebook.
And I sat there for about 3 hours, and I finally pressed post.
Hmm.
And I didn't think it would have much of an impact, but wow, over that weekend, over 1,400 comments, thousands of likes and extra comments and added stuff. Um, and I realized that I'd done something quite significant. And the long story short, I just kind of went on for the next 2 years, just sort of slowly deprogramming myself. I'd already
Mm.
had SDA Q&A running as a program, but I hadn't done anything with it for 2 or 3 years, maybe more. And I was about to give it all up, and lockdown hits. So I was a full-time musician, couldn't do music anymore. And this young guy from the Philippines contacts me. I don't think he'll mind me saying his name.
No, no, not at all.
It's Lance Cameron Eggy, and
Mhm.
he just LANZ, Lance Cameron, I would call him. And he said, "Look, I listened to your interview with Des Ford, which is in the SDA Q&A season 1, only available on a podcast platform, just the audio." And he said, "Why don't you interview Bill Johnson and get his views?" Now, Lance would have only been 21-ish at the time, young guy studying the Adventist ministry. And I didn't laugh mocking. I just said, "Oh, look, man, I'm just about to walk away from the whole thing. I've had nothing to do with it for a couple of years. I haven't even done a show for maybe 3. I wouldn't even know where to begin to get in touch with him." So anyway, I can't remember how much later, but it feels like a week or 2 later, he emailed me and said, "Hey, I've organised an interview with you and Dr. Bill Johnson next
Wow.
Thursday, 11:30 a.m. your time." What? And I wrote back and said, "Yeah, okay." And so I then ended up going live with Dr. Bill Johnson, season 2, episode 1, and there's this moment in that interview where I say to him, "How confident are you that something supernatural happened on October 22, 1844? Something supernatural in heaven."
Mhm.
And there's this long pause.
Yeah.
And you and I know that if you're a Seventh-day Adventist, you should be able to answer that. If you're a real committed Adventist,
Yes.
believing in the true core fundamental teachings of the church, you should
Quick
be able to
trigger.
answer that
Just
like that and go,
yep.
"Yes, of course something happened that night." He paused for a long time and said, "Oh, Peter, I don't know how to answer that question." And I watched all the love hearts and the surprise emojis, and people started joining the group.
Mhm.
And I thought, wow, I'm onto something here that I just did not expect. There's
Yeah.
there's a real interesting duality living within Adventism. And so I embarked on doing another interview the next week. I think I interviewed John Godfrey, who was at Avondale. Then I interviewed Norm Young, who I discovered was at Glacier View and was pretty much instrumental in writing a further 10 points to the original document I mentioned earlier, the consensus document. Neil Wilson, fearing that the majority was supporting Des, kind of got Norm and a couple of others to write some further points that surely Des couldn't agree with. And the, the meetings had finished, and Neil used this document, cornered Des, got he and Gillian into a back room with a few other leaders and confronted him with that. Not voted on, no other delegates present, and it was
Yeah.
that 10-point statement that led to the defrocking of Des. So I interviewed Norm Young, and what was going to be maybe 6 interviews turned into 86, and SDA Q&A was born, and away we went. And I haven't looked back since. 4 years, 3 shows a week, over 350 hours of interviews,
Yeah. Yeah.
hundreds of guests. What a journey.
That's amazing. That's amazing. I was just checking, and let me share with you guys quickly here. This is the SDA Q&A YouTube channel, and I invite you, all of you guys, to subscribe and support Peter and his amazing project. He has amazing interviews, and they are very deep in each topic. You're gonna find interviews like 2 hours, 3 hours. They're not basic conversations. They are very deep and thoughtful conversations about the Seventh-day Adventist Church, the theology, and everything around, with amazing guests from both sides of the aisle, as we say here in the US, from both sides of the aisle. And that's something that it really catch me, Peter, because maybe I don't have that much stomach. at I know you understand what I'm talking here. I don't have that much, I'm like Peter the apostle sometimes. But
I know.
I really admire you, man. I admire you for your resilience to listen, people, and listening. We learn as well. We learn a lot of stuff listening people, and I really kudos to you, man.
Thank you. It's funny because every show I'm upsetting somebody, like, uh, like talking about long shows. I interviewed Rochelle Anonymous is the name that she goes under, about her leaving the church just before Christmas, and chatted to her for 4 hours yesterday, and had huge backlash from the conservative Adventists, huge backlash from even the gospel Adventists, because they feel like, oh, you're just promoting former Adventists. Um, and then when I do, and today after we've chatted, I'll be interviewing a guy who's very conservative Adventist, and I can just imagine you going, oh, I don't think I can listen to too much of this. And for some reason, I don't know, I've been gifted with the gene of patience, and I just
Yes.
sit there and I can, in fact, what's really playing on my mind at the moment, and I'm going to be discussing this with my guest today, is he's a fundamental traditional Adventist, fully dyed in the wool, loves Ellen White, believes she's a prophet. Um, I don't want him. I don't want to push back on his views. I don't agree with his views. Just make that clear. Just because I have someone on the show that is sharing their traditional Adventist beliefs doesn't mean I am promoting those beliefs. I'm just letting them have
Yeah.
a say. I don't want my show to become an echo chamber. But here's my latest theory I've been grappling with, and I think I've shared it with you before, um, is that I believe these guys, these traditional Adventists that got very upset with the Des Ford theology, I believe they have a valid claim.
Mhm.
I don't believe their belief claims, but their claim that they are holding the true Adventism together, I think is true. All that they say aligns very clearly with source documents of the church, its teachings, Ellen White's teachings and visions. It's a unique kind of Adventism that has Sunday's the mark of the beast, the papacy is the beast, probation is about to close, the investigative judgment, the sanctuary. These kind of teachings are core Adventist teachings, and folk like Des Ford, who I love and am more aligned with belief wise, they their version of Adventism is so different to the very theology of it is different. It's not just a progression of more conservative to a more liberal view.
Mhm.
It's like bang, exploded onto the scene. Des Ford
Yeah.
and many others, not just Des, a whole new kind of theology kicked off in the early 60s. Questions on Doctrine, as you know, was written trying to make Adventists look like they're just a normal evangelical church, but they keep the Sabbath.
Yeah.
And of course, the traditional Adventists did not like that. They believe that the new theologians have taken away from them their birthright, and I think they have a valid claim. I think
Yes.
the new theology guys have taken away and I think for the better, but they think that they're just kind of progressing and revising Adventism. No,
Mhm.
it's a new beast. It's a whole new, oh, excuse the pun. It's a whole new thing. It's a different thing. And I'm not saying they should leave. I'm just saying, please at least identify that you are a whole new thing. You are not a progression from these other guys, and they have every right to be upset with you. They've got every right to be upset.
Yes, yes, I agree 100%. And another point that is very important from my perspective, I came from Brazil, and Brazil during a long time was a very Neil Wilson type of Adventism,
Yeah.
right? A very political ground, a very political place when you move based on the moves of the people. If the people move to the right, the church moves to the right. If the people move to the left, you adapt the church without breaking too much the columns, the main fundamental base of the church. Uh, in your perspective, Peter, uh, how do you see the Seventh day Adventist Church over the next 10 years? And we are talking about a generation that is, leaving us, and a new generation that is coming. And we see people like Ty Gibson, for example. We are seeing names like other very, I know you use the word progressive, but kind of a mid of the way Adventists. How do you see the church? You see a congregationalism coming, the fundamentalists keeping their churches, and the new Adventists keeping their churches by themselves. The GC splitting in two parts. How do you see this?
Well, I don't think the progressive, as I call them, liberal, revisionist, gospel Adventist, those who have stemmed from a love of Des Ford's teachings, I think they've seen their day. I think it's over for them. They're all baby boomers. They're all retired or passing away. I believe the legacy of Des Ford will live on forever, and that's fantastic. But I find them to be quite silent in shouting their Adventist version from the rooftops. They
Hmm.
tend to gather together, as they always have, in kind of little quiet sanctuaries away from others. Um, I believe that they will die out, and they have not passed on this new theology to younger Adventists. I believe there's a kind of Adventist that is cultural, and you can go to many churches. They don't talk about Ellen White, and they don't worry about controversy, and they're just happy Sabbath, haystacks. They're great for the community, good music. I believe they will continue in a small percentage.
Hmm.
But I believe the Ted Wilson, the Neil Wilson, the church prior to Questions on Doctrine, 1957, the post Ellen White church, where it really galvanized putting her on a pedestal. Um, but for some good reason, she had that mantle even from the beginning. Really,
Yeah.
I believe it is going back to them, no matter what happens. The heyday of Jan Paulson being president and the opportunity of gospel Adventism to flourish, thrive, and find a place within the Adventist church, maybe being left alone to some degree, keeping out of the hair of the traditionalists, whatever.
Mm.
It kind of functioned in my area for at least 30 years like that. But I believe that the progressive Adventist didn't fight strategically enough to keep their place in the church politically, and I believe it is all over for them. It is not going to come good, and I think that the the Adventist church, as we can see under the Ted Wilson leadership, is
Hmm.
going to flourish for a very, very long time.
A very tough question, and we are both not Seventh day Adventists anymore. We left the church, but I have a question. Would you be okay of seeing a Seventh day Adventist church that is the fun church, the evangelical church, the good music, the good Sabbath, the good food, and then nobody talks about Ellen White. Nobody mentioned Ellen White. Ellen White is not in the agenda of the church, not even in preaching, PowerPoints. She's gone. She's still there in the 28 beliefs, but she's gone from the practical, behaving, preaching, singing, whatever, and still there, but not being mentioned and being this kind of evangelical version of the SDA. Like they put her, in the attic and just close the door. How do you think this may be another version that is coming away?
I personally, I don't think so. I think
No.
I think that movement had a chance, but they needed strong leadership, and they kind of did. Even when Des Ford had left, there were plenty of people who were really moved and changed by the Des Ford message. Um, but they they were too focused, I believe, and me included. I was one of them. Too focused on um, and it sounds terrible because it's important to be focused like this, but focused on just your local church. That's good. I kind of think that's a great thing. So
Hmm.
I'm not totally criticizing them, but if they wanted it to last, the warning signs that the backlash was coming, like I would do music in these kind of churches you speak of every weekend,
Mm.
and I knew way back in the 80s I'd be called a tool of Satan, or why were you tapping your feet, or people would corner me after a program. So while I thought the majority was heading towards this gospel progressive Adventism, embracing this new theology, um, I could totally see the conservative fundamental Adventists picking up steam, organizing, monetizing, networking. And I remember in the early 90s thinking, whoa, hang on, you guys, these guys are going to make a comeback. But
Mm.
the problem is with the happy clappy gospel Adventists is they're all, hey, love Jesus, and oh, happy Sabbath, and hey, let's really, and they're all good things. I'm sounding like I'm mocking it, but they are good things. But you need to have leadership that sees the big picture, and I believe that the gospel Adventist, progressive, revisionist, whatever you want to call them, this kind of Adventist that wants to see Ellen White way back in the bus instead of in the front seat, I
Hmm.
think they're quite a beautiful little movement. And I think that myself included, I think we were lacking in getting organized and networked and political, and I think they have missed their opportunity. And I'm not trying to be depressing. You will always have those little pockets that you speak of, but the majority of Adventism is now well and truly returned. It is over for the progressive Adventist. And so you can be a progressive Adventist, stay in the church, but at least don't have your head in the sand. At least
Hmm.
realize that you are now a tiny, small little subset of a movement that has a way different mission than you have. And their mission is to vindicate God, keep the commandments, be the remnant, place Ellen White as foremost, as representing that they have the spirit of prophecy. They're going to be pushing the Sunday law. They're going to be, it's happening right now, and it is not going to go away this time.
Yeah.
The progressive Adventists had a chance. That chance is gone. They will never reach that kind of strength and momentum again.
How do how your family react, and after you made the official decision that you were leaving the church, how you balance that information? I know your kids, they were little during that time, which facilitates the whole logistics, but how your family react?
Yeah, that's a good question, and reminds me also, as I was holding Renee, watching the no vote. She's 2. I'm thinking I cannot put my name to this anymore. It was because I wanted to be authentic to them, to those 2 kids, my 2
Hmm.
daughters, and my wife and my immediate family and friends, of course. But I thought the most important relationship the most effective relationship I can have with my daughters is an authentic one. And I just felt if they saw me getting up the front and singing at Adventist churches and promoting the Adventist message, even though it was what I believe the progressive gospel, more biblical version, I just knew I would have to constantly give them caveats all the time. And
Hmm.
so I wanted to be authentic with them. I didn't really know or care about what anyone else thought. But I have had every kind of possible reaction. I'm very fortunate. My sister had already left the church. My parents haven't officially taken their name off the books, but I hope I'm not speaking out of line if they ever watch this. But I would say fairly confidently that they don't see themselves as Seventh-day Adventists at all. Um, my immediate family have all pretty much passed on, but the extended family that are uncles and aunties that I mentioned earlier, with that fifth generational link
Yeah.
back, um, a few of them are surprisingly supportive of my podcast, and a few of them don't like it. But those that would have been the most upset had long passed already. My grandmother, my mum's brother. Um, Look, they would have still loved me. It would have been fine. So the reaction hasn't been bad at all from my family or my friends and Adventist friends that have walked away from me. Essentially, um, uh, I don't think were my friends in the first place. In
Mm.
fact, my father. So on the Friday, I do that post. This is my last Sabbath as a Seventh-day Adventist, and on the Sunday, Dad turns up at my doorstep at home, and I thought, oh, I wonder what he's going to say. I didn't even really know. I hadn't
Wow.
chatted about this with my wife, my
Oh,
family, friend. All I'd said was to my bass player, I won't be an Adventist by my next birthday.
my birthday. Yeah.
That was the only conversation I had about it. And
Wow.
he came inside and he put his arm on my shoulder and he said, "Son, you've done the right thing." And
Wow.
that was
Amen.
really reassuring.
That was powerful.
Yeah.
That was powerful. Guys, we're gonna stop right now, but we're gonna have a part two because Peter is going to his show to receive his guest for next guest tonight. But we're gonna continue tomorrow, and I hope you stick with us. Thank you, Peter, for the first time,
Thank
and
you
see you
so much.
tomorrow.
I'm looking forward to it. Thank you.
Okay, bye bye.
See ya.